She discovered the guard's whispered plot and saved the millionaire from an incredible danger. The late-night shift at the diner was bustling as usual, but Sarah's heart raced for an entirely different reason. Scrubbing the same floor she had cleaned countless times, she caught snippets of a whispered conversation between two security guards positioned near the doors. Their faces were shadowed, but their intentions were shockingly clear. "We disrupt that gala," one murmured, "and we sent a message." Her stomach twisted. The gala was everything a lifeline for Maple Grove. Yet, the distrust simmering around Mr. Thompson, the millionaire who sponsored the event, fueled the guard's ambitions. How could jealousy boil over into this? As she continued her work, her breath became rapid and shallow. The elders in town revered Mr. Thompson, but many weighed the scales of class differently. Was it worth it to put herself and Mia at risk for someone she barely knew? Each of her thoughts felt like a pendulum swinging wildly, oscillating between duty to her daughter and the impulse to protect a stranger. They were just two sides of the same coin, their fates oddly intertwined in the tumult of Maple Grove. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The weight of her decision clung heavily to her, like the damp air of the diner. Each moment she spent dragging her mop across the tiles was laced with unease. She could imagine Mia performing science experiments, painting, and thriving with the tools that a college fund would provide. Would she get those opportunities if she chose to confront the guards? Or would this endeavor only serve to endanger everything she fought for? In hushed whispers, she engaged with her fellow janitors during breaks, her heart echoing the silent agreement to address their suspicions about the guards. Each of their faces reflected a shared darkness, a need to voice their frustrations. But the fear of retribution cast a long shadow over their thoughts. Would they still support her if she chose to act? The walls felt closer, stifling the very air she breathes as their conversations mulled over her like smoke in the night. Every choice became a mental battle, the stakes hardening into resolve. As the gala day loomed, the tension wove tighter. What if her plan failed? What if one tiny slip of the tongue altered everything for Mia? The looming question reverberated through her mind. Could she risk it all for someone else's peace of mind? Torn between loyalty and self-preservation, she stood outside the gala venue, her heart thudding in her chest like a war drum. The glittering lights flickered above her, but darkness clung to her thoughts. A sound sharp and jarring pierced the night, making her blood run cold. Who would define justice in a town painted in hues of envy? Could she be the one to tip the scales? Or was she merely another pawn waiting to be sacrificed in a game that felt impossibly larger than her own fears? The cacophony of laughter and conversation spilled out from the gala, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside Sarah. As she stepped closer to the entrance, the warmth from the crowd enveloped her, yet she felt an icy dread ripple through her. Every instinct screamed at her to turn away, to retreat into the shadows where she couldn't be touched. But she knew that turning away meant abandoning not just Mr. Thompson, but also the chance to shield Mia from a future filled with instability. Yes, she stood on the precipice of decision. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, igniting a determination she had not known she possessed. That flicker of resolve transformed into a plan. Crouching behind a towering potted plant, she observed the security guards, their eyes darting about, scanning the lively room as if searching for mischief to unleash. She had learned enough about them to identify their chatter and understand the rhythm of their lurking intents. The danger was real, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. Her heart thudded as she intercepted snippets of their conversation again. "Security's tight tonight. We leave a mark, make them remember." A cold sweat crept down her back at those words. They were not just threats, they were promises. The gamble for the silent approval of their misguided peers was intoxicating to them, and she could see the haze of envy shrouding their judgment. In a moment of clarity, Sarah realized that these guards were not born of inherent evil. They were products of an environment steeped in resentment, molded by a lack of accountability and ambition. In that moment, she felt a spark of agency rise within her. Sarah wasn't just a janitor. She was a keeper of her daughter's dreams, a force to be reckoned with. She stepped away from the plant, her feet finding a steady ground. As she approached the nearest staff member, she recognized a fellow janitor named Tom. His brow furrowed with worry as she caught his eye. "Tom," she whispered urgently, "we need to warn the people inside. Those guards are planning something." His expression shifted from caution to concern. "You're sure? What if they hear you?" That question hung heavy in the air, and the reality of it struck Sarah hard. She felt an exhilarating surge of empowerment as she recalled a lesson from childhood. There's more strength in numbers. Together, they could stem the tide of chaos brewing in that venue. They might not take us seriously, but there's strength in being right. Tom hesitated, but a flicker of understanding ignited in his eyes. "Then we need to gather everyone. It's now or never." With resolve crystallizing their path, they moved through the shadows, discreetly calling out to other janitors, pacing through their shared spaces. Each nod of confirmation solidified their unity, turning nebulous fears into actionable intent. Their whispered conversations morphed into shouts of purpose, and they began to formulate a plan to alert the hosts of the gala. Just as they leaned into this newfound strength, a loud crash echoed from inside the hall. Gasps erupted, leaving anticipation zinging in the air. The guards had made their move. The moment for hesitation had passed. The battle between right and wrong blazed white-hot. Sarah's breath came fast, an electric thrill igniting in her core. Her internal resolve solidified as the words echoed through her thoughts. This was about more than her life or her daughter's future. It was about standing up, transforming from passive observer to active protector. She took the first step toward the entrance. A confrontation loomed large. It was time to face the forces that would threaten their safety. The time had come to face what lay hidden in the darkness. Would Sarah's courage be enough to change the tide, or would the chaos consume her and her newfound allies? The moment Sarah pushed through the door, the chaos within the hall enveloped her, swallowing her whole, yet igniting a flame she hadn't anticipated. The opulent surroundings of the gala, with its sparkling chandeliers and elegantly draped tables, were eclipsed by the shadows projected by tall figures. The cacophony of panic and confusion radiated from the guests, but it was the danger she sensed that drew her focus. "Help! What is happening?" A voice yelled amidst the tumult, rippling through the crowd like a shockwave. Adrenaline surged in her veins as she scanned for Mr. Thompson, the target of the guard's malevolence. Survival instincts kicked in, and she felt an unfamiliar surge of agency. "Tom!" she shouted, her voice slicing through the noise as he joined her side, eyes wide with both fear and determination. "We need to get to him," Sarah said, cutting through the crowd with purpose. The guards stood like sentinels at each exit, their faces twisted into predatory smirks, fully confident in their power. Each step closer sent a shiver down her spine, urging her to run away. Yet she pressed on, a silent pact with herself forged in that fiery embrace of purpose. "Stay close," she instructed Tom, her heart racing. She could feel the electricity in the air, a palpable mix of danger and resolute determination. As they neared the group of guests attempting to flee, she caught sight of Mr. Thompson, cornered and overwhelmed. Beside him stood two of the guards, laughing cruelly as they toyed with his sense of security. The sight twisted her stomach, igniting a brutal clarity within her. "Tom, go around to flank them," she decided, the plan forming quickly in her mind. The fear almost paralyzed her, but she couldn't succumb to it. There was too much at stake. Tom nodded and slipped away into the melee, a determined look on his face. With her head held high, Sarah charged forward, calling out, "Mr. Thompson." He turned, eyes wide as relief washed over his features. "Sarah, you shouldn't be here. No, you shouldn't be here." She could see the guards tightening their grips, a sinister amusement flickering across their faces. "They're not just bluffing." Mr. Thompson, the larger guard, stepped forward, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "And what do you think you can do, cleaning lady?" The derision and dismissal ignited a primal fire within her. "I might have a mop in my hand, but I'm not afraid of you." The words tumbled out before she could second-guess them. This was no longer about fear. It was about self-affirmation. Tom emerged from behind the table, a determined stance forming beside her. "Get away from him," he demanded, voice steady. The two guards exchanged glances, surprised by the audacity of their challengers. Fearless strategies buzzed in Sarah's mind. "You need to leave. People are watching. You want to make a mark? Do it outside. We can all see what you're capable of." "Is that a challenge?" The larger guard taunted, though the tremor of uncertainty danced in his voice. Her heart raced, each beat emboldening her resolve. "This isn't a game, and we won't let you play with our lives." The air seemed to grow tense, the unresolved energy palpable. She was no longer just a witness. She had stepped fully into the fray, a newfound warrior in a world that had always seemingly relegated her to the periphery. As the guards hesitated, weighing their options, a collective breath held in the crowd seemed to create a shifting dynamic. Was this moment, the convergence of her courage and the guards' uncertainty, a shift in power? But before Sarah could grasp the full weight of their hesitation, a gunshot cracked through the air, disrupting everything. The threat had escalated. Would her newfound bravery be enough to combat this new level of danger, or was it merely a prelude to the chaos that would ensue? The gunshot echoed like a strike of thunder, reverberating through Sarah's bones. Time seemed to slow as the cacophony of chaos morphed into a suffocating silence, her heart pounding loudly against the confines of her chest. Mr. Thompson's eyes widened in anguish as he instinctively recoiled, drawing a protective stance. The guards, though momentarily surprised, quickly regained their composure. "Everyone get down," one of them barked, his voice laced with authority, forcing guests to the ground. Fear surged among the crowd, yet it triggered a fierce resolve within Sarah. This was no mere game of intimidation anymore. The stakes had risen in that moment. Her mind raced with possibilities. She scanned the room, her vision darting from the guards to the screaming guests and then back to Mr. Thompson. She could no longer just react. She needed to pivot from survival to strategy. This wasn't just about getting Mr. Thompson to safety. It was about reclaiming control over the situation. "Mr. Thompson, come with me," she shouted, making her way through a sea of panic. The guards had divided their attention, momentarily distracted by the ensuing chaos, giving her a sliver of opportunity. "No, stay back," one of them commanded, smoke and fury brewing within his eyes. Sarah grappled with the instinct to flee, but the fiery voice inside her screamed for movement, and she willed her feet forward. "Now!" she yelled, and in that instant, Tom rejoined her, eyes wide yet fiercely determined. Together, they drew on their shared conviction, each knowing that one misstep could mean disaster. "Do you trust me?" she asked Tom, her voice barely rising above the tumult. He nodded, though uncertainty flickered across his features. "Then we go." As they pushed forward, the atmosphere thickened with tension. Sarah spotted a small kitchen entrance to her right. "There, we can use that." The doorway glimmered with a beckoning promise of safety. "Get him, Sarah," Tom urged as he diverted the guard's gaze, almost daring them to pursue. It was in those split seconds that Sarah realized Tom had ventured into a role that required bravery of its own. She couldn't falter now. With instinct guiding her, Sarah surged towards Mr. Thompson, catching him off guard. "Follow me," she commanded, grabbing his arm with surprising strength. He hesitated, fear still gripping him, and she locked eyes with him. "Trust me, we can't be cattle for these wolves." In the face of dire circumstances, her words seemed to seep through his fear. He nodded and followed closely as they began to slip through the throng towards the kitchen. Another gunshot rang out, this time closer, a shot of desperation, not precision, making the crowd scatter in renewed panic. As they reached the doorway, Sarah glanced back and saw Tom standing tall, ready to protect them. "Go! I'll hold them off," he shouted, momentum pulsing through him. Tom, no. But each plea fell useless in the charged environment. It was too late. He was already executing his own plan, one born from his own courage and determination. Heart racing, she pulled Mr. Thompson into the kitchen, determination coursing through her veins. This wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about dismantling the power the guards wielded in her mind. In the dim light, a thought struck her. They weren't just threats. They were symbols of oppression, and her response was pivotal. Would she allow fear to dictate their fates or step up as a driving force against brutality? "Sarah," Mr. Thompson said, eyes still shimmering with confusion. Yet there was an ember of hope igniting within him, kindled by her resolution. "Mr. Thompson, we have to act, not just run. If we analyze how they control this space, we can turn the tide." As they crouched behind stacks of supplies, Sarah felt a pulse of conviction. This was her moment of truth. In her core, she recognized a burgeoning strength, a relentless will that demanded she step from the shadows into the light. Outside, she could hear the guards approaching, their footsteps heavy and sinister. The air thickened with the weight of impending confrontation. Would her awareness of the guards' movements allow them to formulate a plan, or was this the dawning of another layer of chaos? The time had come to face the guards not only with defense, but with a calculated counterattack born from the whirlwind of her burgeoning self. As Sarah crouched in the cool shadows of the kitchen, an instinctual calm began to settle within her. The adrenaline coursing through her veins was being tempered by clarity. She had always been a woman of action, but now she understood that action needed direction. Her thoughts swirled with possibilities as she listened to the muffled sounds of chaos echoing from the main hall. "Mr. Thompson," she whispered urgently, "we need to find a way to use their own tactics against them. They think they have control, but what they don't realize is that we can turn the tables." Mr. Thompson's eyes, still clouded with confusion, began to sharpen as he absorbed her words. There was a flicker of recognition, a spark igniting where fear had reigned. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice quaking yet edged with cautious curiosity. "They're hunting for us, right? They'll be looking in familiar places, expecting us to bolt instead of strategically maneuvering our way through this. If we can create a distraction elsewhere, we can slip past them." A heavy thud resonated from the kitchen's double doors, making Sarah flinch. Her body tensed, but she zeroed in on the immediate need to take control of the narrative. Every moment was a lesson, reminding her of the importance of calm amidst chaos. "Grab whatever you can," she instructed Mr. Thompson, who stood rooted, his hands twitching with anxiety. "We'll create a diversion." With urgency, they began scrounging through the kitchen. Sarah's hands grabbed a stack of heavy pots, their metal surfaces reflecting the dim light and amplifying her resolve. It wasn't just about escaping. It was about reclaiming agency in a situation that had spiraled beyond her control. "Here," Mr. Thompson said, picking up a handful of kitchen towels. "We could light these and throw them out to create smoke." "Yes, that's it," Sarah replied, her heart racing as excitement surged through their shared purpose. "But we need to do it in a way that gives us time to slip out as they chase the smoke." "Can you stall them?" His eyes widened, the weight of her request palpable. "What if they want to listen?" "We'll make them listen," she said, a determined edge cutting through her voice. "Focus on your breathing. Remember, it's all about their perception. If we throw them off balance, we have a chance to escape." They quickly devised a plan, settling on a service door that led to a narrow alley outside. The guard were bound to chase after whatever commotion they created, leaving the main entrance unguarded momentarily. As the thuds from the guards grew louder, Sarah nodded to Mr. Thompson. "We have to go now. On my count." She raised her hand, and when it fell, they moved synchronously, adrenaline forging their movements, They hurled the pots across the kitchen floor to create noise and chaos, while Mr. Thompson ignited the towels, tossing them toward the main hall. The flames spattered briefly like fireworks before catching hold, smoke billowing toward the ceiling. I could see that instant. Sarah seized Mr. Thompson's arm and guided him to the service door. "Move! Move!" she urged, their hearts drumming in tandem. They darted through the door just as the guards began to crawl toward the kitchen, shouts echoing behind them. Once outside, the cool air hit Sarah like a blast of clarity. She felt a mix of exhilaration and disbelief. They had turned the tide, even if momentarily. The chaos they left behind was a manifestation of their reclaiming power. "Where do we go from here?" Mr. Thompson asked, scanning the dimly lit alley. "Anywhere but here," she replied, pushing against the adrenaline still coursing through her. They needed to regroup, to assess the real danger that loomed ahead, not just from the guards, but from the uncertainty that threatened to engulf them as they hurried down the alley. She couldn't shake the notion that this encounter had awakened something deeper in her tenacity that had long lain dormant. Each decision, each moment of bravery forged a path toward newfound conviction. In the face of danger, she had discovered the leader within herself, and as they approached the street, Sarah's mind began to race once more. They were merely trying to escape a fire, but she was beginning to see the landscape of battle ahead. The guards were organized, but their structure might present mistakes, cracks in their facade, waiting to be exploited. Once we're clear, we need to find a way to gather information on them. They can't be this competent without some weaknesses, Sarah whispered, her voice steady yet laced with intensity. "Information? How we do that?" Mr. Thompson asked, the previous fear in his eyes now replaced by a budding curiosity. Sarah paused, a plan forming in her mind like a slow dawn breaking across the horizon. "We need to get back inside. But this time, we go in with purpose in that fleeting moment." Determination gripped her heart anew, a tangible shift as she readied herself for the next phase of this unpredictable journey. The time for mere survival had ended. Now it was time to unravel the puppeteers orchestrating chaos from the shadows. As they emerged from the relative safety of the alley, Sarah felt the weight of their precarious situation pressing down on her. The street was quiet, illuminated only by the pale glow of streetlights casting dark shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. It reminded her all too much of the uncertainty that lurked not just outside, but within her as well. The adrenaline that had initially spurred her into action had now mutated into a cold sense of focus. She had to capitalize on the clarity she had found in chaos. "Mr. Thompson," she said, shifting to tactical mode, "we don't have much time. We need to blend in. Is there somewhere nearby we can lay low?" He nodded, pointing down the street to a small cafe with its sign flickering like an old neon dream. "We can wait there, observe. Maybe there won't be as many eyes inside." As they approached, each step felt heavy with the gravity of their choices. This was not merely a survival strategy. Sarah's mind was racing with possibilities. How could she turn the tables further? The guard were sure to be looking for them, yet the doubt that lingered in Mr. Thompson's eyes reminded her of the stakes involved. Once inside the cafe, they settled at a table in the far corner, partially hidden from view. Sarah glanced around, studying the ordinary faces of patrons immersed in mundane conversations. There was no hint of the surreal nightmare playing out just a few blocks away. A sharp inhale signaled a shift within her. She realized that ordinary was to be embraced and weaponized, a cloak amidst the chaos. "Focus," she whispered, her eyes narrowing. "We have to observe not just for safety, but for information." Mr. Thompson, his eyes anxiously darting, leaned in closer. "But how? They'll have their guards posted in public places exactly." She interjected, her mind racing with scenarios. "And every action they take will have a pattern. If we can identify how they operate in public, we can find gaps, weaknesses to exploit. They might not expect us to track their movements while they're at their most relaxed." As she formulated her plan, Sarah could feel a shift within herself. A blend of fear and determination had morphed into something sharper, a killer instinct born from the desire to take back control over her life and choices. When had she become more than a victim of circumstance? The question echoed in her mind, but was quickly set aside as a matter of survival surfaced instead. They finished their coffee, stealthily watching as a group of guards filed in through the cafe's entrance, their demeanor suggesting a false sense of comfort amid the lurking threat. Sarah's heart raced as she scanned the guards for possible connections, knowing that somewhere amongst the bravado lay crucial intel. "Look over there," she nudged Mr. Thompson, directing his gaze to a guard casually chatting with a local barista. "He is too relaxed. If we can get him to reveal how the guards communicate, we might find weakness in their operation. What if he recognizes us?" He muttered, worry curling his brow. The remnants of panic were still evident, yet the urgency in Sarah's eyes ignited a small ember of resolve in him. "We'll create an opportunity," she said. "Trust me." Rising from her seat with purpose, Sarah repositioned herself by the counter, pretending to check her phone while calculating her next move. She noticed the guard's hand gesture, a subtle signal indicating some sort of communication. Her instincts kicked in as she noted how easily they were blending into these familiar surroundings. She leaned closer, intentionally dropping her phone to the ground. "Oops, sorry," she said with a hint of eagerness, waiting to see how the guard would respond. "Watch it," he snapped, brushing off her interference. But Sarah caught sight of something. He was looking at the barista, who suddenly tensed, adjusting the way they communicated. Now she knew they had a code. A spark of inspiration ignited in her mind. Perhaps she could engineer a direct connection, implicating herself as a potential asset, effectively shifting the perception of the guards around her. She rounded the corner to engage the barista directly. Sarah felt the thrill of the chase. This was no longer just about escape, but about hunting for the truth. What she uncovered could change everything for them if it didn't kill them first. But how far was she willing to go to leverage this newfound control and power? The answer loomed over her, and the tension hung thick in the air as she prepared to confront the unknown paths ahead. And just when she thought she was ready to step into the fire, a thought whispered through her mind. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. This was about redefining her existence and confronting the masters pulling the strings in the shadows. As the guard moved to intercept her, she braced herself for what could either be her greatest opportunity or her darkest moment. As the guard approached, Sarah's heart drummed in her chest, a primal rhythm of fear and exhilaration. In that instant, she understood the importance of clarity. It was crucial to appear composed, even when the walls felt like they were closing in. A rehearsed smile flickered across her face, masking the storm inside. "Hey there," she chirped, forcing a lightness into her voice that didn't echo her internal dread. "Sorry about the phone. Just thought I'd take a quick look around. You know how it is, right?" The guard, taken aback by her sudden cheerfulness, raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, sure. Just watch your step." An opening. Sarah seized it, leveraging the guard's curiosity. She leaned closer to the counter, feigning interest in the pastries that displayed before her, but her gaze was locked onto the barista. "I'm actually new here. Do you guys do any secret drinks? Something special?" The barista hesitated, caught off guard by her question, but the guard shrugged, dismissing her inquiry as another customer's whim. Sarah pressed on, a strategy coalescing in her mind. "I overheard something about the guards. They talk about codes, signals. Anything like that happening here?" The guard stiffened, visibly uncomfortable. She needed to remain unassuming yet probing. "Just trying to learn the local lingo, you know?" A flicker of recognition crossed the barista's face, and Sarah's instincts surged forward. She noticed the guard's posture tighten, the protective shell around him beginning to crack. If she could maintain the ruse long enough, perhaps she could extract more information. "Where I come from, we have our own little signals too," she continued, her voice smooth as silk. "Maybe you'd be interested in sharing a few?" The barista, visibly torn between her fear of the guards and the need to keep the cafe running, glanced at the guard before shifting her eyes back to Sarah. It's not that simple," she stammered. "You enough, The guard interjected, his tone hardening. Let us keep the chit-chat to a minimum. A chill spread through Sarah, but her resolve solidified. The guard's reaction screamed of tension and aversion, suggesting that the whispers of a hidden network ran deeper than she had initially thought. She was onto something significant, and the guard's irritation suggested she was digging into a wound that was sensitive. Just thought I'd make a friend, Sarah replied nonchalantly, feigning a carefree demeanor. Seems like everyone else got their little groups. It's fascinating, really. The guard's eyes narrowed, and in that moment, she could feel the tension shift like a thickening fog. It was now or never. I mean, if you don't want to, it's all good. I can keep my ears open and my mouth shut, right? The barista's hesitation melted slightly. You're right, she said carefully, but you need to understand there are eyes everywhere. Sarah nodded, forcing her pulse to steady. Exactly. That's why I'm curious. I'm just trying to stay safe. The guard shifted uncomfortably, his gaze flickering between Sarah and the barista. His unease was palpable, and for the first time, the tension felt like an advantage she could capitalize on. Maybe we can find a way to connect without drawing too much attention, Sarah offered, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hum. I mean, I'd hate to feel out of the loop. As she spoke, Sarah felt layers of uncertainty unravel within her. This was no longer just about reconnaissance. It was about psychological manipulation to shift perceptions in her favor. It was a path she hadn't considered before, using her instincts to gather intel while simultaneously drawing an invisible boundary between herself and the threat. In that tangled moment of strategy and risk, Sarah caught a glimpse of her own burgeoning identity. She wasn't merely in survival mode. She was fierce, adaptable. The question now loomed large in her mind. What more could she uncover from this delicate dance of deception? As the guard took a step closer, leaning in just enough for Sarah to notice the slight tremor in his voice. You don't know who you're dealing with. The words hung in the air, heavy and charged, a chilling reminder of the danger that loomed. It whispered of the darker currents that flowed around her, both unnerving and electric. Whatever obstacles lay ahead, she knew she was swimming deeper into risky waters, where old truths would collide with newfound abilities. And there, amidst the uncertainty, she sensed a hidden truth waiting to unveil itself. What exactly were they protecting, and how far would they go to maintain secrecy? The answers could either be her salvation or damning proof of her overreach, and the stakes had never felt higher. With that haunting question echoing in her thoughts, her next move crystallized. The fire within her began to grow. Ready or not, she pressed forward to unearth the truth behind the guards and their intricate plots, where every choice would lead her deeper into confrontation. Yet, as faint whispers of secrets loomed on the horizon, she couldn't shake the growing realization. It was not merely about survival any longer. It was a calculated battle for identity and power. The very essence of who she was depended on what she discover next. Facing not just the guard, but the monsters lurking in the shadows, Sarah prepared herself for what lay ahead. The moment of truth was drawing close, but the path remained shrouded in as much fear as it was wetted with possibility. And in that charged silence, she took a deep breath, ready to dive into the unknown depths of deception and revelation. What awaited her just beyond the doorway of ambition? And could she unravel the truth without losing herself entirely? The din of the cafe faded into a hum as Sarah's mind raced, each heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of her thoughts. She understood that she stood on the precipice of discovery and deception, a delicate balance of risk and reward. She had to push further to deepen her connection with the barista while navigating the guard's aggressive watchfulness. As Sarah's thoughts raced through possible strategies, her eyes flicked back to the barista. "What were your hours?" she inquired lightly. "I'd love to come back and try that secret menu item." The barista's smile faltered, an indication of the tension hanging thick in the air. "You should be careful. Things don't always go as planned here." "Isn't that the truth?" Sarah replied, her voice an easy facade. But inside, She was unraveling the implications of the barista's warning. This place wasn't tea, just a cafe. It was a nexus for a deeper undercurrent of conspiracy. What if the pastries were merely a distraction for something much darker brewing beneath the surface? The guard's shadow loomed, and Sarah felt the weight of his scrutiny. She needed an ally, someone who would confide in her without the fear of retaliation. With a calculated smile, she leaned slightly closer to the barista. "You seem like someone who knows what's really going on. Maybe I can help if you're willing to share." A flicker of surprise crossed the barista's face, but it quickly dimmed as if a cloud had passed over her. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered, her eyes darting to the guard once more. "Right," Sarah said, backtracking, but her mind was already racing with possibilities. She needed to shift her approach. Instead of pushing for direct information, she would create a bond. "You know, when I first got here, I felt so lost. It's a tough transition coming into a place like this." With vulnerability, she hoped to weave an invisible thread that might spark trust. If she could position herself as someone relatable, the barista might let her in. The barista hesitated before nodding slightly, her defenses lowering just a fraction. "It can be stressful. People see things differently." "Like what?" Sarah pressed lightly. "What's different here that I wouldn't understand?" Before the barista could respond, the guard stepped forward, clearing his throat. "That's enough. You're not here to pry." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she maintained her posture, a mix of feigned innocence and growing determination. "Just trying to make small talk," she replied sweetly, willing her tone to remain calm. "Everyone loves a good conspiracy, don't they? Plus, it's bad business to ignore a new customer eager to learn." The guard's expression hardened, but Sarah sensed a shift within the barista. Bursts of defiance flickered in her eyes as she wrestled with the tension of the moment. "Just watch how you tread," the barista warned, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone has something they're hiding." With that, the seeds of possibility took root in Sarah's mind. The barista had skirted around something significant without fully acknowledging it, a teetering intention that could lead Sarah closer to her goal. "Secrets are a funny thing," Sarah mused aloud, maintaining her amiable facade. "Sometimes they're what keep us alive." The barista's gaze flickered back to Sarah, a new understanding forming, yet it was clouded by caution. "Or they can bury you," she countered, the weight of her words lingering heavily in the air. With nerves pricking her skin, Sarah felt both empowered and dangerously aware of the thin line she was walking. This was more than just manipulation. It was a test of her character, her resilience. Each exchange pulled her deeper into the web of this community, revealing layers of her identity she had yet to confront. Feeling the fire of ambition surge within her, she pondered her next steps. Sarah knew she had to find a way to explore the shadows lurking in this cafe's corners without drawing deadly attention. But the very mention of buried secrets ignited an insatiable thirst within her. What lay beneath the surface? What truths would she unearth next? As the cafe buzzed around her with patrons blissfully unaware of the tension brewing, Sarah needed to take a chance. She felt the time approaching when she would have to confront the guard directly. Stepping back slightly, she resolved to draw upon her own hidden strengths, the ones that sparked in her when confronted. The unfolding layers of deceit and the potential allies she might form made the stakes clearer and more urgent. What awaited her was both terrifying and thrilling, a confrontation that could forge her future or irrevocably shatter her carefully constructed facade. Sarah could feel the shift in momentum, moving toward an impending confrontation where her resolve and cunning would be truly tested. With everything on the line, Sarah was determined to find out just how deep the roots of this conspiracy ran and how she could maneuver within their tangled web without being ensnared. The time had come to push the boundaries and discover the hidden truths veiled in danger. And deep in her gut, she sensed that the next move she made could tilt the delicate balance between survival and revelation, leaving her on the edge of an irreversible choice. With a determined breath, Sarah leaned against the cafe's cool counter, her pulse thrumming in her ears like a relentless drummer. The guard's presence was oppressive, but she could not retreat. The time for hesitation had faded. She needed to unveil hidden truths without tipping her hand. "Can I get a refill on this?" she asked, holding up her half-empty cup. The barista's expression softened marginally as she moved to pour, giving Sarah a moment to consider her next move. She needed to cultivate an alliance while maintaining her own safety. What do people really mean when they say things don't go as planned? Sarah skillfully reintroduced the thread of her earlier conversation. This time, her tone was layered with understated urgency, hinting at her need for more than just idle chatter. The barista's gaze shifted between Sarah and the guard. "Be careful what you dig for. There are layers upon layers here." Her voice, just above a whisper, carried the weight of unspoken knowledge. "Layers, huh?" Sarah mused, nodding as if she understood, but her mind was a storm of possibilities. It was crucial to decipher this cryptic language, to break down the walls of subtext. She leaned in, her voice low and inviting. "We all have our reasons for being here. What's yours?" The barista hesitated. A flicker of pain crossed her features, and for a brief moment, it appeared she would reveal all. But then the guard shifted, his posture menacing as he watched every move with hawkish intensity. As if sensing impending danger, the barista pulled back, her resolve crumbling. "Just watch," was all she said, her eyes darting back to the guard. There was a bordering familiarity in the way she uttered those words, imbued with the knowledge of someone who had experienced firsthand the consequences of peering too deeply into dark waters. Feeling the tension tighten like a noose, Sarah was driven not by fear, but by a burgeoning resolve. The veiled hints of conspiracy were too enticing to ignore, and she knew she had to decide what kind of a player she would become in this delicate game. Glancing around the cafe, she observed the other patrons closely. Each face reflected a microcosm of stories, secrets, and lives intertwined in this shadowy network. If she wanted answers, she would have to engage more than just the barista and the guard. A broader strategy was needed, one that allowed her to glean information under the radar. "Maybe I'll come back tomorrow," Sarah suggested, feigning casualness. "I could use a tour of your secret menu." The playful lilt in her voice belied the sharp focus in her eyes, and she quickly added, "Then we might chat a bit more." The guard stiffened, eyes narrowing in suspicion, but the barista responded with a subtle nod, a flicker of understanding returning as she caught Sarah's challenging gaze. There was potential here. Sarah could almost taste it. Once she made her way outside, the air felt thick with anticipation. Sarah had been a clock wound tight, ticking toward an inevitable blow. As she walked, her mind buzzed with calculated steps. Alignments, history, tactics, she was crafting a new narrative. But it wasn't just about alliance building with the barista. It was a lesson in resilience and adaptation. She realized that within this complex web of shadows, failure to grasp the nuances might lead to devastating outcomes. Each encounter would define her path forward, emphasizing her need to remain adaptable while driving toward her true objective. With this newfound awareness, Sarah's resolve solidified. She was not merely an observer. She was becoming an integral part of the story being woven around her. The whispers she had heard of deeper conspiracies were a clarion call. She felt drawn to embrace the mystery, fully aware of the repercussions that lay beyond. As she turned a corner, her mind raced. An urgent question flared. Who else could she investigate? Where else could she unearth the intertwined stories that formed the edges of this disquieting tapestry? Little did she know, the answer she sought would bring her face to face with adversaries, testing her moral compass while unveiling strength she had not yet tapped into. Each decision from here would mirror the depths of her desires and fears, leading her closer to an unavoidable confrontation with powerful forces. With a heart full of resolve and a mind lit by the flickering candle of courage, Sarah understood she was on the cusp of revelations that would challenge her limits. The atmosphere buzzed with unsolved mysteries yet to be uncovered, and she was ready to dive further into the unknown. And as shadows deepened around her, she sensed the moment was drawing near for an encounter she could not avoid, one that would either snatch away her chance at the truth or thrust her into the heart of danger itself. With each passing day, Sarah transformed her fear and uncertainty into purpose and strategy. No longer just a woman fighting for survival. She morphed into a determined warrior ready to fight both for her daughter's future and her own sense of identity. The cafe had become her strategic headquarters, a hub where she could observe the shifting dynamics of power with calculated precision. Having established a tentative alliance with the barista, Sarah made subtle inquiries, piecing together the threads of the conspiracy that enveloped Maple Grove. As the barista cautiously shared bits of information, Sarah listened intently, each revelation fanning the flames of her ambition. The guard, despite seemingly omnipresent, was a pawn in a greater game. A realization dawned on her. The network was built on fear, and fear could be dismantled piece by piece. She began to document every interaction, scribbling notes in the margins of her mind. Guard rotations, patrons' conversations, alley entrances, and possible escape routes. Her sharpened instincts led her to discover logistical patterns and recognize that chaos held the power of opportunity. Kane, the head guard, complacent in his authority, often underestimated her potential as an adversary. That evening, armed with new insights, Sarah planned to venture back into the festival grounds where the gala had initially spiraled into chaos. They had created a vacuum of leadership, and now was the moment to seize it. If she could infiltrate the guard's operations, she could expose their weaknesses. She texted Tom, urging him to join her. When they met, his eagerness mirrored her own. "You're really going to go back?" he asked, eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and excitement. "Yes." "We turn the tables," Sarah replied confidently. "Knowledge is our power, and we must act while we still have the element of surprise." As dusk cloaked the town, they approached the back of the now somewhat silent gala venue. The guards, once imposing, appeared distracted, loitering and chatting, their bravado dissolving under the weight of complacency. This was their moment of vulnerability. "Let us create a distraction," Sarah whispered, a fire igniting in her gut. "I'll go to the side entrance. When I give the signal, you make noise near the back, loud enough to pull their attention." Tom nodded, adrenaline coursing through him. What if before he could finish, she squeezed his arm? "No what ifs. We prepared for this. Trust me, together we can prove to them we are more than what they think." With determination guiding her steps, Sarah edged toward the side door, her heart racing. Once inside, a sense of purpose enveloped her. She had crossed an invisible threshold, no longer just a bystander, but a significant player in this unfolding narrative. She waited for the perfect moment before signaling Tom. He shouted and banged on a nearby dumpster, drawing attention effortlessly. As she peeked out, she saw the guards rush toward the commotion, their backs turned. Now, it was time for her calculated move. Sarah slipped into the shadows of the guard room, searching for any indication of their plans or communication methods. A weathered bulletin board caught her eye, filled with hastily scribbled notes and photographs of people whom she could only presume were targets. The system would not withstand her scrutiny if she could document their intentions. She reached for her phone, taking quick shots to capture evidence of what could be their undoing. Just then, footsteps echoed the hallway, and her heart sank into her stomach. She had to act quickly. "Get out," a gruff voice shouted, followed by the sound of heavy boots approaching. Sarah ducked behind a metal shelf, adrenaline whispering louder than ever in her ear. As the guard entered, intent and unaware, Sarah could practically hear her heart pounding as she waited for him to pass. With deft movements, she snagged a notebook resting on the edge of the desk. Scribbling down urgent notes, she recorded every detail she could before slipping silently away. A breathless moment of triumph surged through her. She was not just surviving, but thriving within this whirlwind of chaos. She rejoined Tom outside, both of them breathing heavily, eyes wide with excitement and relief. "Did you get anything?" he asked, glancing around nervously. "More than I could have hoped," she replied, clutching the small notebook against her chest like a precious treasure. "But we need to strategize our next move carefully. Their discussions deepened as they huddled beneath the cloak of night, devising pathways that would unravel the guards' monopoly on fear and reveal their misdeeds to the community. They had become champions of uncertainty, themselves evolving into forces of change. Sarah was brimming with the solid confidence that the quiet warrior within her had finally awakened. As dawn broke over Maple Grove, Sarah knew she had a responsibility beyond her own personal struggle. She had gained traction towards creating a safer community for the families who lived in the shadows of this chaos. She felt invigorated by the clarity of her ambitions. She was no longer just performing her mundane job. She had stepped into a role that demanded courage and intellect. Why actively seeking possibilities instead of dragging through dark fears, Sarah not only conquered her personal demons, but also carved a new path for her future. She was a protector, a leader, finally willing to rise amidst adversity. With a notebook secured and determination blazing within her, this was only the beginning. The truth was waiting just beneath the surface, and she would gather momentum to fight and reclaim that which had been taken from her and her community. As she stood at the edge of her town, she felt powerful shifts occurring not just in circumstances, but within herself. Resolution surged through Sarah. She was bound to break free from the shadows and embrace her rightful role as a guardian of empowerment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories, because this is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your engagement makes a difference in spreading stories of personal overcoming. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending and what you think Sarah will uncover next. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread this heartfelt journey.